So, should you skip breakfast to lose weight? I mean, it's got to be one of the most debated questions in all of nutrition, right? For decades, we've had it drilled into us. It's the most important meal of the day. But, a whole wave of new research is really starting to challenge that old wisdom. So, we're going to follow the evidence, see where it takes us, and get to the bottom of it. I'm sure you've heard this one before. It's this famous saying that's been around forever, and it has totally shaped how millions of us think about our morning meal. It basically frames breakfast as this non-negotiable, essential start to a healthy day. And right here, this is where things get a little tricky. If you're specifically trying to manage your weight, does that old rule still apply? Or could skipping that quote-unquote kingly meal actually be a smart move? This is the big question we're going to unpack. So let's look at where this idea even came from. What's so interesting is that the whole most important meal thing wasn't really born out of some ironclad medical science. A lot of it was actually shaped way back when by some really savvy marketing from the growing cereal industry. It was all about creating a new routine to fit the new industrial work schedule. Now, for years, the science did seem to back it up. I mean, large studies that just observe big populations, they consistently found this strong link between eating breakfast and being healthier. People who ate breakfast tended to weigh less, have better diets, you name it. But, and this is a big but, notice the key word here, associated. It's a correlation, not necessarily causation. And this is where the plot really thickens. Researchers started asking a crucial question. Do people weigh less because they eat breakfast? Or is it that people who just have healthier habits in general also happen to be the kind of people who eat breakfast? To figure that out, they needed a much more powerful kind of study. Okay, and this slide shows the difference perfectly. Observational studies are great for finding clues, for finding those patterns. But randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, they're the gold standard for figuring out if one thing actually causes another. You literally take a bunch of people, flip a coin, and tell one group to eat breakfast and the other group to skip it. That way, you can isolate the effect of breakfast itself. So what happens when you do that? When you run these super rigorous trials and you just look at the single act of skipping breakfast, does it lead to weight gain like we've all been told? Well, the answer turned out to be a pretty big surprise for a lot of people. Get this. The verdict, when you combine all of these different trials together, is actually really clear. On average, the people who were told to skip breakfast, they didn't gain weight. They actually lost more weight than the breakfast eaters, about 0.66 kilograms, which is almost a pound and a half. Yeah, you heard that right. So wait, how on earth is that possible? Is there some kind of metabolic magic going on? Nope. It really just comes down to simple energy balance. The big question was always, well, if you skip breakfast, won't you just get super hungry and eat way more later? And this chart shows us exactly what happens. It turns out, while people who skip breakfast do eat a little more at lunch, it's just not enough to completely make up for all the calories they missed in the morning. On average, they end up eating about 252 fewer calories over the whole day. And, well, that creates a calorie deficit. Okay, but what about the whole starvation mode thing? The fear that skipping a meal will completely tank your metabolism. Well, these controlled trials looked at exactly that. They measured people's basal metabolic rate. That's how many calories you burn just by being alive. And they found no significant slowdown. So that whole metabolism myth, at least in this context, just doesn't seem to hold water. So case closed, right? Skip breakfast, lose weight. Awesome. Well, not so fast. Because the number you see on the scale, that's really only one part of the health puzzle. This is where the story gets a whole lot more nuanced, and where we have to start talking about trade-offs. And here is the first major red flag. The very same studies that found that modest weight loss for breakfast skippers, they also found something else. A pretty significant increase in their LDL cholesterol, that's the bad cholesterol, by almost 10 points on average. And that's something we have to take seriously. Why? Because higher LDL is a major, well-established risk factor for heart disease down the line. It's the stuff that can build up as plaque in your arteries. So the question becomes, is a little bit of weight loss worth that potential risk to your cardiovascular health? The second big trade-off is all about nutrition. Research shows that skipping breakfast often leads to a drop in your overall diet quality. And it makes sense when you think about it, right? Breakfast is often when we get in a lot of really nutrient-dense foods that we might not get otherwise. Things like whole grains from oatmeal, fruit, fiber, calcium from milk or yogurt. So the bottom line here is pretty simple.
You might be eating fewer calories, sure, but the calories you are eating might be of lower quality. It just becomes that much harder to hit your daily goals for all those essential vitamins and nutrients when you completely take one of your three main meals off the table.
Okay, so we've looked at all the evidence. We've got a little bit of weight loss on one side of the scale, and on the other, we've got higher LDL cholesterol and lower diet quality. So, how in the world do we pull this all together and make a smart decision for ourselves? This table really lays out the central conflict, doesn't it? On one hand, yeah, skipping breakfast can help reduce your total calories. It might even feel more natural for some people whose hunger is lowest in the morning. But you absolutely have to weigh that against the very real downsides, the potential hit to your cholesterol, and making sure you get all the nutrients your body needs. And this is the most important takeaway of all. There is no single right answer that works for everyone. The science does not point to some universal rule we should all follow. Instead, what it really tells us is that the best choice is personal. It completely depends on what your main goal is. So, here's a simple way to think it through for yourself. First, just ask, what is my number one priority? Is it purely short-term weight loss, or am I playing the long game for heart health and overall nutrition? Second, listen to your own body. Are you actually hungry in the morning, or are you just eating out of habit? And third, be really honest with yourself. If you skip breakfast, do you have a solid plan to get those missing nutrients in later? So there you have it. The scientific verdict isn't a clean yes or no. It's a trade-off. You're potentially trading a little bit of weight loss for higher cholesterol and a tougher nutritional challenge. So the only real question left is, knowing all of that, for your goals and for your body, is that a trade you're willing to make?